Hi there, I'm Andrew McComb,
And I'm Peter Gillett, and welcome to Web3 TV.
where we help entrepreneurs and investors understand the potential of Web3 for their businesses, investments, and lives, as we share inspiring stories of Web3 creators, entrepreneurs, and experts making a difference to the world. Pete, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Well, Pete, in today's episode, we have the absolute pleasure of speaking to Nick and Alexander from Utiliti, who are making waves in the Web3 space by helping existing businesses easily transition from Web 2 to Web 3 with their Utiliti software. All right, Pete, should we go and meet Nick and Alexander?
Let's do it.
We have the privilege of speaking to Nick and Alexander from Utiliti, formerly Hero Galaxy, but we're going to talk about that journey shortly. Nick, welcome to the show. Alex, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, I know there's a lot of people wondering how you got in this space. So, Nick, do you want to start with maybe what your background was and how you came to be in the Web3 space?
Yeah, most certainly. So as it pertains to Web3, I've been let's say a long time bag holder, right? So bought Bitcoin in 2012 up to no good on the internet, and held for a while and went through the classic, Bitcoin hero's journey of wow, magic internet money to, oh my God, this fiat system makes no sense. And professionally went into Web3 around this time last year. Actually, was managing about a $500 million ARR business unit at Amazon Web Services and got excessively bored and decided to strike out on my own and start a company, seeing a gap in the market in developer tooling. So here we are.
Fantastic. So that's the short journey, mate. I'm sure it's a bit longer term than that. So have you always been into tech, or what's the, what'd you study at uni, and what's the passion behind all of this for you?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, I mean, growing up in Seattle, Dad worked for Microsoft for a while. I think I was on a computer from age 5 and on the classic, Windows 98 playing solitaire is one of my absolute first memories. And so definitely always been into tech, right? Like I think crypto and today's NFT scene is not a huge leap from the 2 or 3 years that I spent on like Neopets as a child, trading JPEGs of animals and items therein, right? And so kind of a natural fit to enter into this new world of digital ownership, right? But as far as uni, not anything to do with tech. I kind of thought lawyer for 5-6 years. Pre-college, thought lawyer for 3 years during college, studied political science. I have a degree in both poli-sci and economics, and then got out of school and thought, I can't do any more school. And so went to work for a tech company. It's a classic Seattle story. Got rained on my whole life and then went to work for Amazon.
Fantastic. And Alexander, what about your story? What's the backstory there?
Yeah, gosh. Well, I guess we can just start kind of with the introduction to this Web3 space and this whole crazy blockchain thing we're working with now. But I was exposed around 2014 just through some acquaintances of mine that had been using Bitcoin for some early transactions and had always been kind of excited about what the technology was. And at that time there wasn't nearly as many folks using it, and it was definitely something you needed to dig deep a little bit to learn more about maybe what it could look like in the future. So it was very vision based back then, and I can't say that I immediately introduced to it. It might not have been that bright beam in the sky, as you could say, back then, and over time it started to kind of materialize of what this could turn into, particularly with some of the underlying blockchain stuff. So after that, I kind of just spent the following years doing all sorts, whether it's speculation and kind of the trading aspect, from automation and all the I guess you could say degenerate stuff that folks may have done through some early interaction there with NFTs, and just kind of being involved with the space for I guess a long time now, a majority of his existence. So it's been exciting to see it grow. And on kind of a professional and personal level there, I've kind of run the gamut in different professional roles, a lot of project management and PR direction. And for school there, I did focus on marketing and international business, and got lucky enough to spend some time living and working in Israel. and kind of continued the cryptocurrency journey there. They've got a really strong community over there, particularly for Bitcoin, and they've had some of the earlier Bitcoin ATMs, meetup groups that were a thing kind of the past, and now are growing into these large conferences and kind of bigger networks and I guess legit companies now like ourselves. So yeah, just a lot of time watching the space grow, and I think Nick and I are both really excited to see kind of where it's going now, and already the huge steps that everyone has taken.
Yeah, it's literally infinite, isn't it? What the possibilities are. How did you guys come to meet? Were you friends at uni, or like what was the connection there?
Geez, it's been almost 14, 15 years. So Alexander and I grew up together on Bainbridge Island. So we're both from a smaller island across the water from Seattle, and went to high school together, played lacrosse together, known each other quite a while, and then got back together in the context of the inception of this business. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we took a nice little break there. That was a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Had too
was.
much of the guy.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you got some good history. So tell us, guys, how did it all start? Was it a Hero Galaxy thing to start with that then evolved to Utility, or you tell us about that journey?
Yeah. So shoot, this time last year, a few buddies of ours were on this journey to build a Web3 layer for Minecraft, right? So like, what infrastructure does it take to onboard a Gen Z teenager with a 15-second attention span into a Web3 game without them necessarily knowing that was what was happening? It sounds like a no-brainer, now that you've seen Reddit and other people, Starbucks, take steps in this direction, but back then, even a year ago, it was kind of crazy, since the only way you interacted with Web3 or NFTs was through, a MetaMask and a browser plugin, and that was pretty much it. And so the idea there was basically, well, maybe we can build this frictionless Web3 layer. And so we got to work with them originally behind the scenes, and then launched a project on the platform that was built sort of let's say a Minecraft user facing game, right? Added a lot of functionality that we felt was necessary to support again, back to this Gen Z user profile, right? Like enough functionality for them to be engaged in this world of Web3 and NFTs. And then ultimately, I would say March or April, we were kind of arriving at the conclusion that, hey, while we're not incredible Minecraft game builders, and the average Minecraft player is maybe not so keen on NFTs, this tech that we built, right, as far as the shared services platform, was going to be massively important, as the next phase of this space is going to look like, larger companies, larger entities, onboarding mainstream people into digital loyalty programs, apps, games, things like that, where most of the crypto friction and otherwise aggressively complicated nuance that is associated with dealing with anything on the blockchain is faded into the background, leaving behind basically just a regular Web2 user experience, plus the added benefit of digital asset ownership. And so we were originally conceiving of that as a separate business unit, right? It's like, we built the software for the game, we have the software here, we can sell it. That was all of our backgrounds, was in software sales, is what I was doing at AWS. And then obviously, Microsoft said no more NFTs on the platform, and we said, great, that saves us a lot of trouble, because we were pretty bad at this game design thing and pretty great at this software building thing. And so now we can go full time on sort of just trying to grow this company, where the vision is that any developer should be able to very easily develop on any blockchain without any of the nuance or friction that's historically been associated.
Wow. There's a lot of jargon there, mate. So
Yeah.
as a novice in this space, so Hero Galaxy, was it a play to earn game at the time, and then it evolved into, as you said, it wasn't your bag, I guess, and it turned into Utility, which is now more of a platform that services anyone wanting to get into Web3?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So there's, I would say, 3 customer profiles developing for this company, right? We're seeing Web2 gaming executives who've moved on into Web3, looking to stand up Web3 games where they're looking to onboard mainstream users in a frictionless way. And then you have Web2 enterprises looking to release digital loyalty programs where they're leveraging digital assets to sort of drive consumers toward actions that they find favorable. And then the last is sort of your more indie developer profile, where they just log onto our platform, stand up an account, and get to work getting NFT projects, smaller games to market 10, 15 times faster than they would have otherwise been able to, sans all this sort of foundational technology that we built.
Fantastic. So I guess I'm going to keep coming back or taking backward steps, because I really want to clarify this for the audience. So
Yeah.
when we're starting out with Hero Galaxy, tell us about the NFT creation side of it, and how did it work initially from, say, the white paper through to minting, to the reveal side of it?
Yeah, that was a good question. So what we wanted to do therein was pretty unique at the time, right? Like the original idea was that, well, I suppose it's not a unique idea, right? Every single video game on Earth, for the most part, has in-game assets that are wearable items, weapons, skins, apparel, right? And then avatars for characters to wear. And so our idea was that, hey, we should release a game on the blockchain where the NFTs that represent people's character avatars can be actively modified with items. And so that was, I would say, the crux of the initial white paper was like, hey, we're going to build a game here that's actually fun with tokenomics that are sustainable, that could not ultimately turn into a Ponzi scheme, and that the growth of the game supported the token price, and likewise the any wanes, I would say, in player interest were made up for by the fact that the game was basically dedicating any profits generated there into a liquidity pool. But the crux of it was really this whole, we're going to create generative avatars that can then wear NFT items. And that was the biggest part of the white paper, was like, we need to build this new foundational technology that no one's built before in order to advance the space forward, to make sure that NFTs can be dynamic, right? And that gamers could get this traditional gaming experience, the one that they were already familiar with in Minecraft, without necessarily having to learn anything new unless they wanted to.
Mm-hmm. And I want to add too, I think when you really boil it down to, I guess, the problem rather that is being addressed here is that, and Nick and I have both been avid gamers for quite some time too. We've spent plenty of time online, as do many other folks. Again, mentioning this avatar of kind of Gen Z and now even younger folks who spend so much time online. And while it is enjoyable, you're putting in quite a bit of time, and what you get rewarded out is always inside of kind of a closed garden. And there's not really any sort of a way for you to, I guess, redeem that or reward yourself in an incentivized manner to really glean anything from that time spent. Of course, it's enjoyable. That's why folks still do it. But we think that there's better ways to reward folks, and that goes for user experience, but also eventually the folks who are making these games and who are making these programs for at an enterprise level, or augmenting any sort of a live experience or whatever it might be. That adding the ability to kind of own these assets that Nick is talking about here, and adding the ability to reward yourself for doing something you already enjoy, is kind of how this all began, and how can we build that into what at the time was Minecraft. So come a long way.
It's such a great concept, isn't it? It's essentially taking what people were rewarded for and fun, to they could start earning tokens, which are transferable to cash at some point, from my understanding. Also, the value of the avatars, etc., were rising. That as NFTs, they're rising and falling, etc. So that's its own business. I guess from not only teenagers, but for potentially third world countries, etc. It's actually providing huge opportunity, isn't it? Their play to earn space.
Definitely. And I think, and I think we should delineate too in the context of play to earn versus what we feel is coming as far as Web3 gaming, right? Like, historically speaking, what we've seen are a lot of games where it is providing huge opportunity, but in an unsustainable manner that requires continual onboarding of new players, right? The Axie Infinity model is something that ends up looking like a Ponzi scheme, simply because you need onboarding of new attention to sustain token prices as more tokens are delivered to players. And so I think, like, while it is a huge opportunity, and while that's what we've seen historically, I think that the model, at least what we're hearing behind the scenes from the larger studios we work with, like Revolving Games or whoever, it's not so much balancing an ERC20 economy, right, and trying to release an actual currency for the game, so much as let's keep the tokens in Web 2, but let's let the assets that the players earn be in Web 3, so that they can receive benefits for having spent all that time to go get that souped up set of armor, right? And that is, I think, what we'll start to see over the next couple of years replace the original ERC20 Balancing Act, simply because I don't think anybody's anybody, not least of which the American Fed, has figured out this whole economy balancing act, and so it'll become more play to have fun and own, which definitely resonates with me as somebody who would otherwise have tens of thousands of dollars of both League of Legends and like Elder Scrolls items ready to sell if that were to have been the case when I put all that time in as a child.
Absolutely.
And I think what it offers too is it offers kind of it's a trade-off, right? Because there's always a desirability. Otherwise, folks wouldn't be spending time in these digital experiences to acquire, whether it's some, I guess, particularly we're talking about games right now. But if there was no desire for these things, they wouldn't spend the time doing it aside from pure enjoyment. And by putting these things on chain and giving sovereign ownership, I think that's part of this key of what is the point of adding decentralization to these, or what is the point at least of tokenizing these assets. And it is that, well, we already know these things have desirability, and now let's give our users a way to transact with each other. So this isn't something that's taking away from a game studio. It's not something that is, frankly, even if done properly, going to disrupt primary sales, for example, the Fortnite store. But it's something that with relatively limited effort ends up getting a much better experience delivered to all of your users, while it doesn't really change what they're doing. So that's I think a big aspect of this.
So I guess for the novice who's passionate about this space and wanting to learn more, there's sort of two conversations going on here, isn't there? There's the gaming space that you started with Hero Galaxy, and that was obviously for fun initially, but then there's the finance space where you're actually being able to raise value of the assets that you own, such as the I'll call them uniforms or clothing or weapons or whatever it is that you win. I'm assuming you're winning along the way, or you're acquiring along the way. But that has brought with it other challenges, hasn't it? Because it's now in the finance space, it's bringing the SEC's focus a little bit more. And so what have been some of the big challenges for you guys with that? And obviously that's an evolution process, but what are those challenges, and what are you guys doing about that? Obviously migrating to utility is one of those steps, but what were some of the main challenges there at Hero Galaxy?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So yeah, I think it hits on a larger problem, which is that we're sort of at an inflection point as far as global innovation geography, right? Like where is this innovation with this new digital primitive going to take place? And as the US continues to I would say not give regulatory clarity around exactly what their position on digital assets are, it puts most of it in a very gray area, right? So for us, it was always a challenge of saying, like, how can we be doing this in exactly the right way so that we're not inviting any trouble, right? How can we be making sure that we're releasing assets in a way where it is as we understood the law, is not impermissible, and now that the SEC has moved, I would say, more aggressively in prosecutions toward some NFT projects, some DAOs. It puts I think everything on a standstill that's HQ'd in America to say, like, well, we don't know what's coming, and we want to make sure to not be violating any laws, so it's best just to not do anything. That said, where we see companies starting to move toward adoption, and I'll keep referring to this Reddit model, pending some of the work we're doing with other folks in this area, but is releasing the NFTs for free, right? As a lever to drive consumer behavior the direction you want to as a company. And so that's like, at its root, that's what Starbucks is talking about doing behind the scenes, right? That's what all the companies who are moving in this space are starting to perceive NFTs as, are not necessarily like a financial instrument, right? This isn't something that people should be actively engaged in speculating with. This isn't something that should be inviting regulatory scrutiny so much as that here's a lever, right? A collectible, a gift for you to give to your consumers in exchange for the behaviors that you want to encourage, that then allows you to pick this consumer up out of your tech stack, right? Allow their engagement with your brand to be interoperable with other brands you have partnerships with, or pick them up out of your tech stack and put them into a Discord or a mailing list, right? To use the technology for what it was meant to be used for, as opposed to necessarily just, I would say, creating financial instruments needlessly. And so that's where we do have clarity as far as, release methodology. And that's, I think, where we'll start to see a lot of this more abstracted, less financial instrument oriented blockchain development start to occur.
So again, for me, it's interesting. So you've, with those challenges, looked at ways of going, well, where else can this be of use? And obviously looking at tech as it currently is. Like, I'll just use a real basic example is capturing an email address on your database so you can send them a newsletter. So what you're saying is there's going to be ways in the Web3 space that allows the use of gaming and or other things that are created, and obviously utility is going to be part of that, that then allows you to work with that data in a more effective way. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, so and I don't think anybody, is liable to know this, but we're sort of rapidly transitioning toward this cookieless world, right? Where technology is, and technology companies are not permitted necessarily to be scooping up as much data on their end users as they previously were, which, I think Web3 kind of steps in and solves for that, and that it allows for, I would say, opt-in voluntary transmission of data by consumers. And so, where we see this being especially useful, and where the companies that we are building with are thinking about this as being useful, is in this area of, I would say, sort of understanding who their best customers are, right? So I'll give you an example of something we're working on behind the scenes, right? It's a digital loyalty application, right? So traditional, you're earning points, right, in exchange for, buying products at a retail store. You're walking in, you're getting a drink or whatever it is, right? You earn your points, you earn your points, you earn your points. At a certain level of points, you're able to exchange those points that were not something you paid for, but something you earned from the company for an NFT, right? The businesses then created a mountain to climb, where the NFTs, these digital collectibles, is what they'll be likely referred to here on out, are placed at the top of this mountain, so the business knows, the people who are going to get them, these are my best customers right here, right? These are the people who love my brand so much that they're willing to download my app, accrue these points, and then go exchange them for a digital asset. And then once you have the digital asset in the hands of your consumer, then the consumer becomes a little bit more composable, right? So if I've gone and earned this digital asset inside this phone application, the company knows that I, as the holder of this digital asset, is one of their best customers, has otherwise positive incentive to go pick me up and stick me on a mailing list, right? Pick me up and stick me in a Discord with other people, right? Identify me as the, part of the top 10% of their customers who produce 50+% of their revenue per the Pareto principle, right? And then ply me with additional offers, additional love, and get my feedback, right? As their best customer, it's a free customer focus group, which the company would otherwise be spending millions of dollars on. And so that's kind of how we see it, right? In the abstract, blockchain is useful for, I would say, two reasons. Not necessarily creating financial instruments as it's historically been used for, but more lending this benefit of digital asset ownership, right? Understanding more about the consumers who hold the assets, and then past that, it ends up very interesting in removing friction from inefficient markets, but topic for maybe later in the discussion.
Yeah. So it's quite an evolution, isn't it? It's from Hero Galaxy, which is essentially gaming with benefits, to seeing some of the challenges and looking at ways of evolving even further into Web3 space. How has I understand you've got a significant community that was built through the Hero Galaxy space. How important has that community been for you? And then also, what have been the challenges in keeping that community, who originally, I guess, were Hero Galaxy focused, keeping them now focused on the transition into utility?
So, and that's something that's been really top of mind for us for a while, right? It's like, imagine you're a publicly traded company and your core business gets outlawed, but you have a bunch of shareholders that you need to do right by, so you pivot the venture, right? And so that's what our original intention was. While this was originally in our minds to delineate businesses, right? The software infrastructure business, where we sold the technology that we created for the game, and then the game itself, right? The game, in going away, being tied to the NFTs, it meant that the NFTs had to go be tied to the software business. Now, in light of the, I would say, aggressive lack of regulatory clarity, it's not a whole lot we can do as far as profit sharing, anything like that, until we understand more about what is coming in this landscape. But we could do is offer a discount to people who are holding the NFTs in exchange for, or when they purchase the technology that we've created, right? Nothing impermissible about offering a discount to select people on the basis of their possession of a particular item. So that has been, I would say, a big challenge. In one regard, right, the community has been enormously helpful in us getting off the ground, right? To have a built-in audience of thousands of people right there writing with you when you start a new venture, it's enormously helpful, since you have a customer focus group right there, and you have people to get the word out about what you're doing right there. But all that said, like, I don't imagine that most people are, too excited about waiting for a software startup to grow, which is a long and arduous process. And so to some extent, it's been a balancing act, right? Keeping people informed about what we're doing and updating them on the progress the business is making without giving undue information to competitors. But I think in the long run, it does act as a competitive advantage for us because, I'm not sure you go look at the Twitter of any big tech company, they're getting like 10, 15 likes and they don't have too much reach. I'm not sure that too many infrastructure DevOps platforms have the engagement or audience. So we've accrued on the basis of our start as an NFT project. And so, for our purposes, it's been nothing but a boon and it ends up incumbent upon us to go do things as well as we can to be able to create more value, right?
And to add on to that too, I think that, while and obviously this is the case while we're not a publicly traded company, and while this is not something that is, I guess, as legally bound as maybe some other investment types, that doesn't take away the fact that we've had a dedicated group of folks that have helped support us through all of this, whether it was before, as we've called the pivot and kind of switching the business model and kind of being forced to do so. But, over the years, there's just been too many groups of whether it's creators or folks putting out financial instruments, or NFT groups even, where you see this kind of thing happen and then maybe something goes wrong, or maybe they just decide to leave. Obviously, colloquial, this is known as a rug in the space. And we just want to run this the right way. I would say it's been challenging. Nick said it's been top of mind. But that doesn't mean that, frankly, we're consistently thinking about that community and how can we bring this group forward with us in a different way. And it's kind of frustrating because it takes a lot of time to figure out how to do it properly. And as Nick mentioned, there's just such a lack of regulatory clarity that it's difficult for us to profess any concrete manner in which we might do so, particularly when thinking about anything financially related. But it's something that, we just don't want to be another one of those groups of folks that just tosses everyone by the wayside and cuts and runs. So.
Yeah, and as a member of the community, guys, it's much appreciated, and the clarity that you've provided with us all the time has been great. Taking out profit sharing and those topics that are probably a bit more complicated, do you see a role for the community going forward in terms of the people you're partnering with, in terms of the feedback and ways that we could get involved in the platform?
Yeah, I think so one of the things we've been working on behind the scenes is something like affiliate, right? Not traditional in a way where it becomes impermissible, but more so rewarding folks for their engagement as far as like highlighting to us areas where the tokens end up relevant, or where the software and infrastructure becomes relevant, and then we obviously have these artifacts, these digital collectible wearables we're able to give out to folks, and so we've been playing around with ideas there, and just simply making sure beyond just a simple discount that like we're able to start to give early access to experimental technology, right, and give, I would say, folks who are in the community, I would like a better picture of what exactly we're working on behind the scenes as far as who we're working with, and then access to, information and I would say, whitelists and things to do with the really cool projects building on the platform. And so definitely looking for ways, I think for our purposes, right, it's heads down trying to grow the infrastructure company so that it sheds off enough value that it's able to sustain value being diverted to additional staff to work on the collection, right? And so for our purposes, right, it's like, can't really, create value if there's nothing to be creating value with. And for us, the primary value creator or driver is the infrastructure business. And so it's heads down, I think, full-time, 16 hours a day to scale that as fast as we can to a place where it is able to shut off enough value to support full-time hires, doing more creative things and engaging the NFT community. So I think it'll be an interesting, better together story when it's done. But for now, it is just a lot of hard work.
A lot of work. And I think what's something interesting too is kind of the angle that we're taking here with combining developer communities with some of the existing community members we have that already have such a high level of familiarity with what's going on. And and seeing how we can kind of supercharge that therein, kind of with, mostly what Nick has mentioned, but other things like traditional hackathons for developer communities, but doing that within a community. So it's kind of reasons to get involved with utility heroes, and reasons for you to say, for example, there's a hackathon, but the only way you can win it is if you're a holder of one of our heroes. And then that can kind of drive a competitive space there where folks are coming and joining, so they have access to this type of competition and continued incentive. So there's all sorts of things, like Nick said, that we're going to need to get a little bit creative in lieu of regulatory clarity over these next couple months. But frankly, we think that there's a little bit more that can even be done with this whole model than what we previously had. So like Nick said, a lot of work.
So as a hero and anti-hero holder, there's a lot to look forward to. It's just a matter of being patient at the moment and let you guys do your thing.
Sure. Yeah. That's the word of the week.
Yep.
Awesome. And one of the things that's really attracted me to you guys as well, like this was really one of my first forays into this space, was you hear a lot about like the Ethereum chain and Polygon chain and all the different layer ones and layer twos. What's intrigued me when you're building out Hero Galaxy is all of a sudden I'm buying an NFT on Ethereum, you're equipping it in Polygon. How important do you think these chains will be going forward? And are you providing a solution, I guess, that's more cross-chain as opposed to this one or that one?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's a two-part question. How important? I think massively important, right? Like, part of the reason the barrier to entry for regular people has been so high is just the cost associated with doing anything on mainnet Ethereum, right? No regular person can be asked to, spend $30 on a gas fee to get a video game item, right? But I think that's where L2s come in. We partnered with Polygon and done a lot of work with those guys on public facing things, and I think at one point the wearables were a top 5 project on their platform, and now as infrastructure partners we've worked on quite a few things, including some splashy things that they've announced. And so I expect that scaling solutions, roll-ups, ZK proofs, things like that ends up being massively important just for mainstream user onboarding, since the model that we're starting to see is companies abstracting, and this is something we built, right, abstracting gas fees completely away from the users via gas forwarding relays, so that I as a mainstream user can go get an NFT with my credit card and have it airdrop to the wallet that exists behind an email login without necessarily even knowing what an NFT is. Whereas, if solutions on mainnet wouldn't support that, and the user would be left in the dark paying gas fees that they don't understand. And so I think, it's two parts, right? Ethereum becomes slightly more efficient, and now it's energy efficient, and that's awesome. It's using probably 1/100th of the energy that even like YouTube is itself. But the second part to that is the L2s on top of it moving faster to abstract fees away from end users to get to this place of purely like a Web 2 level of user friendliness. And that's at the point at which we feel like mainstream adoption happens, when everything is the same for a user, except in this world you get to own the digital assets that you're dealing with.
So much information,
and that's a great,
so much innovation as well. And obviously your journey's allowed you effectively to become a thought leader in the space. What advice would you have for, say, someone who's looking to get into the NFT space or play to earn gaming? Obviously we'll get to utility shortly as a transition, but would you recommend it?
I think it's really cool to be curious right now and to be kind of exploratory and really look at what's going on, because there's tons of really creative, interesting projects, missions being built right now, games for people to play. But I personally, at least, and I know that Nick is going to have a good answer for this too, particularly from kind of that thought leadership perspective, but it's be wary. Be exploratory and be curious, but be wary of what you're doing. I think that a lot of the time over these past, I guess you could say almost 2 years now, when this NFT boom has sort of begun and proliferated a little bit, folks are very interested in maybe financial gain and maybe how this could turn up for the better for them. And that might be the core reason for their interest. And I just kind of caution a little bit against that right now. And I think that it's important to if you're going to get involved in the space and you want to spend some time learning and being here, It's more learn what's going on and kind of get a good grasp about the whole ecosystem before you're necessarily jumping in, doing something because you might expect some sort of financial return. And just doing your homework because there's a lot of cool stuff going on.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'd add on to that and say, it's exactly that. It's the DYOR. Past that, it's tough to separate signal from noise here, right? Like in a world where, historically speaking, it's been hallmarked by, pseudo unregulated financial instruments, and people are able to make money simply by fleecing followers, right? You have a lot of people who've gained undue followings on the basis of simply trying to use them as exit liquidity, right? And so I would say, you can find your sweet spot in like, 1,000 to 8,000 followers, people who are developers, people who are building real things, right? Those are the people to go follow and listen to. And if you're interested as as someone who wants to participate from the sidelines, I would say, the amount of non-technical jobs cropping up in this space right now are absolutely insane. Like we're hiring product people in this space. You don't need to know how to code. There's a massive shortage of engineering talent. So, if the space or the blockchain primitive is interesting to you, I feel like, now's the right time to join because the valuations are depressed across the board, and everybody who's left is building something real where, they're having to produce real revenue by virtue of solving a real problem. And so good time to get educated. I don't say follow me because what do I know, but definitely a lot of really great engineers out there to be following, learn about how to, go build cool stuff.
Well, you're certainly a long way ahead in the journey than myself, Nick. So, mate, let's use that as our transition. So you've obviously gone through all the learnings that you've had with Hero Galaxy, and you've evolved into Utiliti. So for the viewers' sake who aren't familiar so much with Utiliti, can you just explain exactly what it is?
Yeah. So I think that the best analogy I have for Utiliti is think about it like Stripe for the blockchain, right? So this for me is maybe just a giant self-interested crusade to pump my crypto bags or something like that. No, I think part of the reason, right, that you've only really seen use cases for blockchain implemented that are, let's say, stupid looking to the mainstream public, right, that get portrayed as a casino, that get portrayed as needlessly created financial instruments, is because it's been so complicated for developers over here to develop anything on any blockchain that really the only reason that people have done it, historically speaking, has been for immediate large profit motive, right? Like that is the only thing that the mainstream public knows blockchain for is, overpriced monkey pictures and people getting fleeced on tokens that shouldn't have been created. And so for me, the purpose of Utiliti is to be, Stripe for the blockchain, right? It's to create a application layer over the top of any blockchain that allows any developer, no matter their experience, no matter the coding language they know, no matter what tech stack they're working with, to build on top of any blockchain they want to very easily. We've taken 5 of the smartest guys on earth from FANG companies for 5-6 months, and then a few more added on top of that. All the development that they were able to do is working 15-16 hours a day for an entire year. Packaged up into one platform that allows people to benefit from that and save themselves that entire year of development when doing things like creating invisible custodial wallets or sending transactions or estimating gas on transactions with an artificial intelligence or hosting metadata all the way down to simply just a mint, right? And so that's the purpose of the company, right? Is let's make this a world that's intuitive and easy for developers to build in. And if we can do that, then we'll start to see some of these very interesting abstractions that the blockchain digital primitive allows for crop up, because building will become so much easier. Same as we saw, I would say, an internet company boom, a SaaS boom after AWS proliferated, right? It gave rise to companies like Netflix and Airbnb and every other single software as a service platform you can think of, where previously, barrier to entry is starting up a data center, right? In this world, barrier to entry is learning Solidity and learning how to deal with edge cases like nonce management, things like this. We're taking that and packaging it up into a very easy to work with UI and API, where developers who just simply know Java can start to build blockchain applications simply. And what we're hoping to see is, like a a boom, like a Cambrian explosion of development.
And just, I guess, progressing that further, Nick, in terms of real use cases, what are you seeing in the businesses you're talking to in terms of some of the implementation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So that's been top of mind for me too, is like, part of the reason we built what we built last year was we kind of hit the nail on the head as far as what was coming, right? It's going to be larger companies, mainstream people onboarding mainstream users into this world without them necessarily having to realize that crypto is what they're dealing with, just inheriting the benefits of the blockchain. And I think we hit that right on the nose, and that's what we're starting to see. And we're behind the scenes on a lot of these things that are going to come out that are going to prove that that is the new model coming forward. And so for us, it becomes this sort of crystal ball act of, okay, what's coming next, right? And so for me, this is a return to first principles thinking, right? So like, historically speaking, blockchain has been used to create financial instruments because it can commoditize things that were previously ethereal, like money, right? Push all of that to the side and say, all right, what else is ethereal that can be commoditized, right? And the answer is really anything. So in digital loyalty, and I've already kind of touched on this, but I'll elaborate a bit. What we're seeing is companies giving away NFTs, digital assets, digital collectibles to their most engaged users as a way to engage them more deeply, cordon them off in a into a customer focus group, and then apply them with more offers, give them additional benefits for holding these NFTs. And I think we'll start to see a lot more of that. I would expect that what Reddit did, it sort of lays down a blueprint for a lot of social platforms to create avatars and engage users that way. Likewise, I would expect that, the Nordstroms of the world, people from this area, are releasing collectibles to folks who are coming to the store often or doing the things that the businesses want them to do. And I think that that's one very interesting area that's near term. Likewise, gaming, similar thing, right? So I go earn assets in games. I am able to sell those assets or do whatever I want with them. And no longer is that asset locked in the Web2 database of a Fortnite. It's mine to own because I earned it. And I think, like, all friction aside, that creates a better user experience than what has previously been impossible to create. Simply adding this element of ownership makes a better user experience. And I think that that's near term, right? 1-2 years. And so the crystal ball game starts with what comes next. And in our heads, this has been an effort to get the right people behind us, right? Like we've onboarded the CTO of Priceline onto our board of advisors to talk to him about, what's coming in travel, what's coming in entertainment, what's coming in ticketing and booking, right? And I think that's going to be especially important, not now, but as sort of this collective action problem gets worked out, where companies have the impetus to do right by their users and creating better user experiences with this digital primitive now that it exists. And I think, especially in travel and booking and entertainment, it has a lot more value to the companies in that space because it lets them sell tickets and then reach into the pocket of the secondary market that is getting facilitated around whatever they've sold. And that's especially interesting, I think, for a company that's in the business of, selling a bunch of tickets that they never get to see profits on ever again because they go into an aggregator or a travel site or whatever. And I think that same model will exist in entertainment. And past that, and this is 3-5 years out, and we're getting to the absolute edge of what I'm able to sort of see coming or even perceive well enough to talk about. But you play this whole, consumers own their data, companies don't own it anymore. This model out to its logical conclusion. We're knocking on the door of a world where the data economy shifts so much that it's back into the hands of the people, right? Enough regulation in place for companies around data collection means that any data that companies are getting, it's voluntarily given, which means that in a pseudonymous world where people are known by their wallets, any data that a company gets is volunteered to them through a wallet connection, right? And so I think what we'll start to see is this blend of Web2 data with Web3 data, where in exchange for a customer's loyalty, in exchange for providing real value to a customer, these companies are able to understand a lot more about who these customers are, what their purchase habits are, what they're doing. Because today, Visa doesn't have information sharing in place with like a Starbucks, for example, so that Starbucks can know how often are they going to my store versus the Dunkin' Donuts. But in this new world, I think that the data quality that companies get ends up better as a function of more things being blockchain based. And I think that likewise, consumers have a better span of control massively over who they're giving that data to, who they trust to have their data. And I'll end my rant there, but I think we're just barely knocking on the door of what could be done with this technology as far as what we've seen for the last 10 years. And I think it's up to us to make it easy for that solo developer working on an internet cafe in Bangalore to originate the next social network that is going to change the world. And so I'm excited to see what happens. And I'm hoping, you know, smarter people than I who can see 10 years out are going to build on this platform some things that I'd never have thought of. So.
Yeah, that's some great insight there, Nick. And there's a few things I'd just like to unpack with that. So first of all, as a consumer, in terms of how this can benefit me, so for in Australia, example, at the moment, we've had a couple of big data hacks here with a couple of our big companies. In terms of my information, do you think my information is going to be safer in this new space? And also, your thoughts around in terms of who I can give my data to is also quite exciting because rather than big companies just passing it on, I have more control over it.
Right, that's a good question. So safer, yes and no, right? So in the new Web3 world, you're permitted to log in with simply a wallet address. And so if you have not chosen to tag your social identity, your real world identity, your non-pseudonymous identity to that wallet, then you're perfectly able to transact and engage and deal with companies without necessarily them having any idea who you are, being able to apply you with Instagram ads thereafter, right? But you know, I think to the extent that people are able to expose themselves, say we all do transact with wallets, you tie your social identity to your wallet, then everybody knows exactly what you purchased for the entire life history of the wallet, which is, I would say, more open, for better or for worse, right? But what I do think it gives rise to is this scenario wherein, you know, say the consumer does own their own data. It's not something for companies to collect for free, but it's something for companies to provide value to the consumers in exchange for their data. You'll start to see models where people are being rewarded simply for engaging with a company, right? Connecting their wallet will probably be an action that gets rewarded somehow by the smartest companies who are looking to understand the most about their customers. And so, you know, you assume right that the underpinning of all of this is capitalism, right? Where, you know, people are providing value out into the world in exchange for value back. Then it's safe to assume that the blockchain digital and primitive empowers people to, you know, engage in value transfers in a new sort of more novel way, wherein, you know, you're getting value back in exchange for your data where you wouldn't have been able to previously. But I guess sky's the limit. I'm excited to see social platforms, creator platforms get get the heat taken to them by platforms that are offering people value in exchange for simply creating anything, right? No rev share, no partnership, no subscriber limit so much as, hey, if you're on here and engaging, that's valuable. If you're on here, you're creating, it's even more valuable. And you own everything you create. We're just simply a network and a protocol facilitating this transfer of value.
And I think it's pretty exciting, this shift, I guess, in terms of companies being able to reward their most loyal customers as opposed to just giving specials to new customers. It's almost like they can really reward their most engaged ones and also be able to have the chance, I guess, to shape the direction of our favourite companies as well. So that's quite exciting.
Definitely.
And I just flip it back to the business case side as well. So if I'm in business at the moment, I'm a CEO and I want to get involved in this. Would you say that my company's ready now to actually get involved, or is there a certain level of tech skills or certain level of staff I need to do to be able to get started in this space?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that honestly is the problem we're trying to solve. Like I've talked to, you know, in my time at AWS dabbling with Web3 with some of the customers that I interacted with, I've talked to maybe 100, 150 enterprise customers who are very interested in exploring Web3, right? But who cited not having the engineers to do it as the biggest barrier to entry for them getting into the space, right? So I think, like, while that previously wasn't possible, platforms like ours and our platform, right, are creating this world where you can use your existing engineers and their knowledge sets to go build anything you want in Web3. And then it's just a matter of conception, right? It's like, how do you deploy, how do you build in this world in a way that's actually value added? I think what we've seen a lot of, much to my chagrin, quite honestly, is, you know, companies taking this very easy layup approach of like, well, we're just going to copy all these NFT projects, sell out an NFT, and then, you know, disappear into the wind like CNN or whatever, where, you know, businesses that are, I would say, slightly more careful and slightly more positioning is like, well, let's wait and see how this ends up actually valuable, or going to be served well in having developed more careful implementations. And then it just becomes a matter of like, you know, who do we have advising us? Like, one of the things that we're releasing is sort of a, let's say, a Rolodex or a directory of Web3 consultants, Web3 tax advisory services, Web3 implementation specialists who we know that we can trust. And so can't find anywhere that all that data is aggregated. We're just going to aggregate that data ourselves to say like, hey, these are people who have worked with our platform before. These are people we know who can implement it. These are people who auxiliary are able to complement the platform with good, solid legal advice or tax advice or strategic advice about how to build in Web3, so that, you know, businesses and even new projects can go learn from people who aren't simply, you know, somebody's uncle who bought Bitcoin early, but you know, people who are thinking about this in the right way.
Do you think, Nick, that
Yeah, that's a
anyone
good
will be able to use this at some point, like the one-off solopreneur, the corporate, the small business, and then obviously from the consumer side is like they're going to interact with it. Is it like the metaverse sort of thing, or is it a layer before that, or what are your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. So I feel like metaverse can be kind of a buzzword, and I don't know that my definition is the same as what anybody else's is, but I do think that we're, you know, we're already sort of like, you think about the lives that we live today, we're already sort of like android symbiotes, right? It's us and it's our technology, and we exist in tandem, right? Like you know, for better or for worse, one of the first things that I'm doing in the morning after I try to meditate is checking my phone, and then I'm existing in this digital world all day long. We're in this world together today. And so I think what the metaverse ends up being, you know, from first principles is like this new world where we're engaged with technology pretty much at all times and living out our lives in tandem with this technology to our benefit. And so I think what blockchain does in this new world is it allows us to reach into what was previously completely digital, right? Web 2 being read, write, internet, and now it's read, write, own, right? And so I think that is what, at least in my mind, you know, when people say metaverse, that's what it means to me is like, it's everything and it's nothing, and it's this world around us that has become half physical, half digital, where now in this digital world I'm able to own things just as well as I was able to own things in this physical world. And we can start to, you know, as humans, extend our conception of what ownership means around things that couldn't previously be owned, where previously, you know, we couldn't, right? Same as, you know, no one knew what a derivative was in the 80s and 90s. It was simply a buzzword for Wall Street traders to play around with. Now, you know, last year, 2 years ago, everybody and their probably to their chagrin 16-year-old son was trading derivatives on Robinhood. And so I think digital asset ownership is kind of, as a concept, permeates into the mainstream psyche like that, to where, you know, like Alexander said in the beginning when we were talking offline, it's like, you know, this whole thing exists, it's real. When no one ever says Web3 or NFT again, people simply just know that they can own things that are digital.
For me, I sort of see like and I know the term metaverse is quite general and Web3 is very general and it doesn't have a clear definition, but for me, it's like, it's almost like we have the ability to recreate planet Earth, and we almost everyone gets the opportunity to start again. And it's sort of saying, well, if you were to get the chance to start again, what would you do? And so I see that in so many, like as an individual, you could do things, and you could do things totally different to how you've done them up until now. Obviously, if you've got avatars operating in the metaverse, they can, you know, be fake or make believe or whatever, but you can live this virtual life as well. So as a business owner looking at how to utilize Web3 and then utility to be able to help them, how does that process work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're trying to drive to a direction where this technology is put in the hands of everybody and anybody, right? Same as WordPress put website development into the hands of your average consumer. Our intention is to bring this to a place where it's so easy, past just APIs and SDKs, for any regular person to engage with it and implement it, that it's really sky's the limit about how anybody could think to build. And out of that, we expect to see a lot of emergent applications, right? You know, my personal take, and not that I'm the best person in the world to be giving strategic advice about implementing blockchain in a business context, right? But I think, you know, the best implementations that I've conceived of, or that any of the brands or enterprises that we're working with seem to be on the cusp of, is this sort of, let's confer digital asset ownership of things that carry some level of, you know, for lack of a better word, utility, right, to our consumers in exchange for the behavior that we want out of them, because we can lend these assets for free, and their existence in the span of our brand lends them value. It means that companies are able to confer an extra layer of value onto their customers. And so, you know, for your small business or your large business or your massive retail enterprise that is selling, you know, donuts and coffee, right, it becomes this exercise of, you know, what actions do we want from our customers, and then how do we give them something in return that gets them more back from us. And so, I think that the best early adoption way that we've seen people do this is sort of just dropping them, for visiting, dropping them for attending, dropping them for going and making a purchase, right? And I think we'll start to see a lot more of that as far as, and this is, more marketing strategy than Web3, right? But like 40% of Gen Z, the primary media, media that they consume, primary medium that they consume media from is gaming. And so in order for a Jack in the Box to engage that customer, when previously it was a commercial on TV, now they're having to pull this audience into a gamified experience. And I think that, digital asset ownership blends almost perfectly with these gamified experiences, because they're giving something tangible to end users that they couldn't previously own directly from the experience with the brand. So I think it's sky's the limit how well you could leverage something like that, this concept of digital asset ownership, to give people something valuable. And it'll be incumbent upon a lot of companies and businesses and gaming studios, right, to just confer value to those assets thereafter, right? Like, video game item is valuable because of the stats attached to it. Likewise, my Jack in the Box attendee loyalty avatar is going to be valuable on the basis of whatever it gets me, right? Be it a discount or a free milkshake or whatever it is, right? It ends up in the hands of businesses to figure out how to use this new digital canvas as a way to reward users in a way that couldn't previously be accomplished.
And I want to add on to that too, because I think one of the bigger value propositions here of implementing this using Web3 and blockchain rather than Web2 is that you're signaling your intent to these power users that you are reciprocating the loyalty that they're presenting to you. And you're doing this in a way that, while giving this asset ownership, it's sovereign asset ownership. And it requires a tokenization and being on chain, so to speak. And what that does is it takes it out of this closed garden scenario where your executor here, maybe it's the Dunkin' Donuts who's giving out their coffee coupons, instead of doing this in your traditional manner. What it does, and of course this gets expanded upon it in much, much larger use cases, is that centralized entity that is issuing whatever it may be has much, much, much less control, and there's fewer touch points for this digital asset that is being owned. So instead of just doing it in the regular old way, which could be done with the internet, what you're really doing is signaling your trust and your loyalty back to this group of consumers by giving them something that frankly is now out of your control. And that's actually a big part of the essence here of what we're doing in blockchain and crypto, is removing that centralization, removing the central authority, and that person who can just come in and say, or take something away from you, or make something suddenly less valuable, or kind of control, I guess, your own destiny with these digital assets. And I think that by putting these on chain and implementing blockchain solutions, that's what takes that away and makes it a much more appealing prospect for the user without damaging the implementation from your enterprise, from your corporation, your game, or your small business.
Alexander, can you give me an example of that, mate? If I'm a consumer, and the power's coming back to me, just give me an example of how that is, and why is the blockchain so important? Is it because of transparency? It's all trackable, right? Or what's the purpose of that?
Yeah, well said. So that's a big part of it. It's transparency, and when something's on chain and a contract executing, unless written in that contract is some sort of a stop or something that might I guess interrupt the sovereign decision making of the owner of that item. So something written into a contract, which can be publicly seen because those contracts are put on chain. It is that transparency and that visibility. And basically this is here now. This is now on chain, and this will exist on chain unless something written in the contract is going to remove it. But because it is transparent, you can't get away with those, I guess you could say, sneaky things where maybe something expires, or sneaky things where suddenly it's removed from you, or a perceived violation of a terms of service for something that might have changed or been overseen, or frankly anything for that matter. And it gives you also the ability to kind of move things outside of the walled garden. Once it's on a chain, that really opens up kind of partner networks, in the sense that there's transparency, whether it's starting at Dunkin' Donuts and ending at Starbucks. If they wanted to get into some sort of a partnership where you're going between the two businesses, this starts to get in again to kind of actually the metaverse thing and what interoperability means therein, not just for technology, but for partnership capabilities. But between the transparency and the ability to kind of expand where you can use these things, now you're using them on a chain, not inside of Dunkin' Donuts closed garden. Those are kind of the two major aspects of how this benefits in terms of those implementations.
It's quite complex, isn't it? As a again, a novice. Yeah. Pete, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so consumer trust and loyalty are obviously important for any business that wants to do well in the long term. I guess in terms of the bottom line at the moment, are businesses seeing an improvement to their bottom line, or is it too early in this space yet?
Yeah, and actually, I want to put an exclamation mark on what we were just talking about. Alexander referenced partnerships, and I think it deserves expansion. In broad strokes, I'll refer to an implementation that we're working on without giving specifics about who the parties involved are, safe to say that they're names that people would recognize. The way we're seeing one particular CTO think about this is as an open database that partners can hook onto, right? So like say you're a Web2 company and you have a Web2 database of customers, right? You have to enable any of your partners, if they want to understand who your customers are and give them offers and partnership with you, you have to enable them to access your Web2 database, which becomes a massive trust issue, and it involves VPC peering at an enterprise level, which is simply impermissible. So if you take this whole partnership database, right, of your customers and put it on chain where any partner accepted into this framework can then go see those customers and apply them with offers as it pertains to the partnership that your business has with whoever the company is, then it becomes very frictionless and easy for sort of interoperability to occur, right? So take for example, say I'm a co-working space, for example, and I want to partner with online job board for gig economy workers, right? Like Upwork. Historically speaking, if I'm that co-working space, I have to, allow Upwork into my Web2 database to figure out who my customers are, to give them offers, or I have to facilitate those offers on Upwork's behalf, for example. But now, if you're basing this on an open database where you understand who these people are, what they do, where they're accessing the co-working space, you can empower your partners to work with you better via making this information open and public and start to enable this interoperability, right? And then so my thought there is right, it ends up easier for interoperability between businesses to occur. Obviously, it's becomes sort of a chicken and egg problem of when do corporations see enough benefit in adopting this technology to actually want to do that? And, as far as how it affects the bottom line, early, right? This is early, but I referenced this sort of mountain to climb earlier, right? Your best customers are getting the tokens if you're putting them on a mountain to climb. What we've seen of folks who've implemented this, again, early, but that if they're managing to cordon off, let's say, their best customers into a focus group, into a loyalty group, into a mailing list, then they're seeing a 3 to 4 or 5% uplift on the revenue that those customers are producing, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but bear in mind, that's the 10% of customers that are producing 50%, 60% of that business's revenue. So any uplift in that area is correspondingly massive. And it is this like, it's like there's this old adage, it's like give to get. And they've done studies into this that I would reference if I had specific data top of mind for myself, but I don't. That something like a 70-80% uplift in spend or in consumer engagement when they feel like they're owing a sense of reciprocity, right? When they're given something, they're more inclined to give back to you, right? And so, for businesses, it ends up being a very low effort, free way to initiate their relationship with new customers and with existing customers by just giving, right? I think, people have that reciprocity baked into them, and this is a low impact way for businesses to start giving back.
So what I'm hearing is this is a win-win for everyone using this new technology. Businesses are better off, the customers are better off. It's just improving the space as we hear it. And it's just great to hear real-life examples now of how this can be a long-term benefit to people, as opposed to, as you said at the start, like quick-term profits where somebody's winning and somebody's losing. So that's a great insight.
Yeah, it's breaking mental models, right? Like if historically all it's been used for is to create financial instruments of thin air, we have to sort of expand the our minds as far as how we're seeing it. And I think, I think for better or for worse, this recent NFT boom that we were certainly a part of has done that, right? Like, while everybody in the mainstream spent all their time laughing on the news about how all people are buying and owning these monkey JPEGs for so much money, it's ridiculous. It's like, I think people miss the fact that the entire mainstream media conceded the fact that people were indeed buying and owning these monkey JPEGs. It's wildly important, because that is that conception of digital ownership starting to leak into the mainstream in a way that it hadn't previously. And I don't think it's too long before, I think early data out of Reddit is showing this, right? That, for all intents and purposes, if both experiences are the same and one of them, someone's dealing with an NFT and it's given to them altruistically as a way to engage them and get them deeper in touch with a brand, people are receptive to that. They like that. They didn't want to know about NFTs when they were a scam in the mainstream media, but now it's like, oh, I own my avatar on a massive 50 million user social platforms. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. And I know I've been keeping you for a while, but if we could just do one example, I guess, based on my experience. You mentioned the travel industry before, and I used to work for one of the premium travel destinations in Australia. And I'd love to actually just go through an example of who in the business would contact you and how that could then look like in their business.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I've heard this is interesting. I want to engage the people that come to the island, like we have regular visitors, and I want to reward them. So first step, would that be to get in contact with you? What's the process that I'd go through?
Yeah, I mean, ideally speaking, sure. I think we have some legwork to do in getting our name out there a little bit more, right? In delivering this message that, hey, there are people out there who are trying to work with companies to implement this technology in a way where it is not a financial instrument, and it's not a scam, and it's not designed to extract liquidity from their customers. And so, play this out a year or two. I hope that to come to me. The way we see a lot of businesses come to us today are through trusted partners, right? Consultants who understand strategically how to be thinking about Web3, but who don't necessarily have this ability to implement the technology themselves. We tend to partner in a lot of cases with people who are helping brands and companies think about Web3, but who aren't necessarily capable of going and building on a blockchain. And I think we'll try to take this quickly to a place that if you're a brand and you have a good idea about something that could be put on the blockchain, as these ideas start to sort of become more pervasive, then, hey, our platform pretty soon here is going to be as easy to use as WordPress, right? Just an HTML embed to do a mint or do an airdrop or things like that. And so that's the direction we're aiming to take this. And so, today, if you're a travel agency, then sure, definitely come to me, and I'm more than happy to talk through what your business might look like if you decide to sell all your bookings for the year upfront as NFTs. And then instead of facilitating cancellations and wasting time therein, you are simply creating an open marketplace for those bookings to be sold and traded, and then reaching into the marketplace with royalty fees, which is a value add for you. I'm happy to have that conversation, but until a point in time at which it is so obvious that these businesses need to move on this technology or get left behind, I think for a lot of people, it'll be waiting and watching, and we'll obviously be there with open arms when businesses decide to take the move. Like, we're partnered with Amazon Web Services to help businesses with footprints on AWS start to think about this technology, and I've seen a lot of customers come through us like that, and hoping to start helping a lot more people in a way where, I'm hoping the end result of it ends up being like actual value added use cases for, like you mentioned, it ends up more user friendly than previously what was possible if implemented the right way. And it's just a matter of sort of threading that needle and figuring out a way to do that in a way that benefits both your customers and your business.
Excellent. I'm intrigued what you said in terms of selling all the NFTs for the accommodation up front, because a lot in the industry at the moment actually sells it to a third provider, say Booking.com or Expedia.
Right.
Is this a way that accommodation providers could sell more of their own things themselves as opposed to relying on a third-party service?
I think so, right? Like, I think it's either that, or I think that it's simply a third-party framework crops up that in a more value-added way empowers these companies, these hotel chains, these airlines to sell their bookings and their tickets as NFTs, right? I definitely think that's coming, right? Like, and this is getting back sort of into the where you kind of have to stretch your brain to conceive of it area, but you imagine. I think people are more or less familiar with DeFi at this point. Maybe not your average person, but it's sort of made its way into mainstream financial sectors at this point, which is, DeFi, for those who don't know, at its root is decentralized finance, right? It is, instead of a centralized bank paying banker salaries, facilitating your trading of stocks or trading of cryptocurrency or trading of whatever, facilitating those transactions. It is a protocol that is just code facilitating those transactions, which means that users can expect stepped up levels of return on their investments, stepped up levels of interest rates, right? Because there's no banker salaries to pay in the middle of the loop. It's just code, right? And so I think that model does get applied in any area where it has historically been a centralized entity facilitating a network on top of it. So like a third-party travel provider, right? That is a centralized entity facilitating a network of purchasers, a two-way marketplace, three-way marketplace on top of it. Same with a creator platform. It's a network, or it's a centralized entity facilitating a network of creators and consumers on top of it. And so I think that this model starts to translate, right? When you can say that with crypto and with blockchain, you can put the right incentives in place and trustlessly see how code is operating so that these centralized entities can be replaced with simply just code and then a protocol to maintain them. You start to see that model come for creator platforms or third-party travel sites, or really any centralized entity that facilitates a network on top of it, simply because the outcomes for the users and the outcomes for the producers on the network end up just better, right? In absence of, I would say, in today's world, like a bloated executive salary take, right? Like, yeah, I don't know what Facebook is spending its money on, but I think that's in the news lately. And apparently, according to Altimeter, they're up to no good. And so, that doesn't happen in a world where the platform is run by code and protocol. It doesn't.
So much information, Nick, it's mind-boggling. If we flip to the business side of it for you guys now, and we say, like Pete said, if I've got an idea, I'm not quite sure how it can work, and I come to you, you'll consult with me. Is that your primary service at the moment, or will you then implement it for me, put everything on the blockchain, make sure it all happens? How does your business work? Who do you do it mainly for? Is it only available in the US, or is it a global business? How does it work from your perspective?
Yeah, great question. So consulting and implementation is, I wouldn't say our core business, but it's a sign of the times, right? Like, this is a very nascent market where no one really knows exactly how to work with the technology or how to create value-added experiences with it. And I don't think that there are terribly too many people with extremely great ideas about how to do that. There are definitely a few, and I think we'll see those win, but I don't think that it's everybody, and I don't think that that's like public information, let's say, in a way where everybody knows it and it's obvious. And so in a lot of cases, we will work with companies to ideate about how they should be thinking about the blockchain. We've worked with partners to help them ideate how they should be thinking about doing their implementations, and got a lot of great folks in that area. And then as far as the actual plugging in of the software, same as a Stripe or any other software as a service company does for an enterprise, we will help folks implement the technology. It's, we built the platform to make it so easy for our own developers to do it that implementations can happen really quickly. And so we do provide that as a service, right? If you have an idea that you want to implement and it's on the blockchain, odds are our platform can do it. And I think the direction we're trying to take this is, I hate to keep referencing Stripe, but they're just such an awesome company, right? It's like, we want to make this so easy that even a non-technical user or power user can go implement blockchain without having to ever speak to me or hear me rant or pontificate at them about how things should be implemented, but simply realize their dreams as far as interacting on the blockchain. And so, we do offer implementation services. We will plug the platform in. The platform does quite a few things, right? Invisible wallet creation to onboard mainstream users behind a OAuth, Facebook, email, Gmail login, sending transactions, doing mints, doing airdrops, pulling data off the blockchain and displaying it in an application or a game, right? Hosting metadata, right? The platform does basically literally everything that you would need to do if you want to build a blockchain-enabled game or application, such that people can start thinking about the blockchain as simply a better database to store information in a way where your users see a stepped up level of benefit. And so that's where we'll take this. And I'm hoping to get to a place where it's not me talking to anybody so much as people just figuring out how they want to build and going and building it, and it being so easy that they never have to ask anyone a question, like WordPress.
Yeah, it is very much like WordPress, isn't it? And obviously you can have that second tier of developers who can utilize it. They can sell, like Envato Market, they can sell their own themes and skins and all of that as well. So exactly. I know it's a business question, but it's also a customer question. What are the sort of costs involved as a consumer? And then also, what are the risks involved for me as my data breaching potential, or other risks that might occur?
Yeah, great question. So as far as costs, we try to keep it to a bare minimum. Like we architected our own infrastructure in a way where it is probably as cheap as theoretically possible it could be to run. We're like I said, partnered with Amazon. We have built out some of this infrastructure in partnership, and we kind of have tried to build in a way where it is so cheap for us to run that we can pass this cost savings along to our customers. Because in this world where everything is super high margin and really high priced because no one knows how to build anything, in my head it's like, well, your margin is my opportunity, right? If we make this so cheap for anybody to deal with, then we do start to see these very value added experiences that are novel start to be built on the platform. And so costs are entirely usage based, right? It's just how much are you calling our APIs. There's a pretty expansive free tier at the bottom end to say, like, if you're a solo dev who's just trying to build something and you don't want to make a huge commitment, like, hey, come try it out, no problem. And then, if it takes off and blows way up, then we grow with you, right? I don't want to ever put anybody in a position as a customer where they're having to reach into the bottom of their wallet to figure out how to pay their infrastructure bills, so much as make it so so low cost that people are just able to sort of play around and really arrive at these more abstract implementations. And the model is, again, purely usage based. We offer people discounts in terms of if they want to sign up to use a bunch of different services and get X amount free API calls per service, then certainly we'll give you a tier to make that a pretty friendly price point. The lowest is $99 a month, all the way up to at the enterprise level, depending on usage and depending on how many wallets, larger than that. But in our heads, it's like it should be this friendly curve of where you're not really paying a whole lot for infrastructure ever, and if it is a medium amount, then it's because your business has taken off so much that we are incurring a lot of costs to support you on our end as far as server space and things like that.
And so what would some of the major risks be? Like obviously security.
Right. Good question. So I think like we mentioned earlier in the call, regulatory clarity is not here. Obviously people are fine to be releasing NFTs for free, but hey, if your goal is to create something that looks and smells like a financial instrument, then be prepared to be headquartered in a place where that's permissible, in Dubai or Singapore, right? And I would say that's point one. It's just how you use the software, right? In my head, we're the garden the plants are growing in, and not the gardener. And so it's not my business to say, hey, don't do this or don't do that. But word of caution to anybody is just pay attention to what your government's saying about the tech. Some governments are saying bad things and they'll probably get left behind in the grand scheme of global innovation. And some governments are saying good things, and go build in a place where the governments are saying good things. And past that, I would say the other risk is just as far as architecture, right? You always have to be mindful of not leaving security holes in your architecture. Like our infra is the same infra that the CIA uses to store its data. We're storing private keys and signing transactions for these custodial wallets inside hardware security modules that are military grade, and so not a whole lot of concerns there. And most of our engineers are yeah, I mean, I get to talk about all this and pontificate at everybody because you have a bunch of geniuses behind me who've figured out how to build technology in a way that makes it maximally easy to use, and they're also security wizards. And so not big concerns there, but obviously don't be storing your API keys in plain text on your application, and all the good tips that I think everybody already knows as far as what you should worry about beyond regulatory clarity. Yeah.
So, Nick, for a startup, essentially, you have some significant functionality already, and obviously the tech behind it. You must have some significant financial backing to then alleviate the risk of anyone who is going to come into this and work with you guys to I guess ensure that you're going to be around in 10 20 30 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's so our finances story is an interesting one. So like I bootstrapped the business out of pocket to the tune of a little over $250,000 when we started. And then obviously we built an NFT, and that was a financial windfall. And then all the money that got spent from the value that the NFT created, we obviously, in the context of the platform we were built in, bought their native token, and that kind of went by the wayside into nothing. And likewise, the builders that we hired in Minecraft and paying team cost of living salaries, basically you know, for our purposes, took care of every cent, and then another $500,000 out of my own pocket that the NFTs created. And so it became this this task of, okay, we'll continue bootstrapping for a while, right? And I did a good job while I was at AWS, creating enough financial independence that we could do that. And then we have taken on some backers, and I think we'll be putting out a formal announcement about that. You know, who is behind us, probably pretty soon here. You know, my big bias in keeping it hush hush is to not accidentally do a splashy announcement about these names or backing Utility before I have a website that looks good enough to really land a bunch of public eyes on, right? I think we're building toward that, but we've been able to get enough deals done with enterprises that we haven't really needed to have a great public face on us so much as just the relationships in place. But now we're approaching sort of like, let's say, platform public launch, which I'm immensely excited about after, you know, 8-9 months of extremely hard work on this, to where, you know, we will put that pretty face on, and the website will be easy to navigate, and it'll be free for a developer to go sign up and start using the platform and benefiting from all this development we've done behind the scenes. And so cannot wait to start seeing some of the implementations that get created with it. Personally, I'll probably be sitting on my computer talking to every single customer in Slack that signs up when self-service live, just to figure out what they're doing and ask some questions. So you know, that was the story of our finances, right? It was like, you know, bootstrapped, and then you know, NFTs, and then all that got just completely blown up by the Microsoft announcement, and you know, and so back to bootstrapping, and then raised some capital, and I think we're clear to build for another few years. And with the rate at which we're growing, it, you know, it seems like a logical conclusion to me as we progress to maybe potentially go raise a Series A at some point, and set up an incubator so we can be funding cool projects who want to build on our platform ourselves. Like, I would love to be in that position to be handing out $100,000 checks to people who want to go build the next social network that I was talking about, right? And so I think that that's the, you know, audacious, and it requires a lot more 16-hour days between now and then, but that's kind of the journey that I hope we're on.
Sounds amazing, mate. It's highly inspiring. You're obviously an outlier in the space, in the Web3 space. You know, you obviously, you mentioned 16-hour days. You've got to focus on business growth, raising capital. You've got infrastructure to sort out. You got your customers. You got your past Hero Galaxy community. I know you've both you and Alexander are busy on Discord as well. So you're at the coalface. So, mate, I can see you must hardly sleep.
Yeah, I don't sleep much, but I do move a little bit, right? It's basically from here to here, and then back to here to the other monitors.
Oh, as I said, mate, it's inspiring, and you know, you're a pioneer in the Web3 space. Do you, like, who do you see as some of the other key players that are shaping the industry?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think the guys at Vayner3 are doing a really good job. That's Gary Vaynerchuk's Web3 studio, and they're doing a good job as far as thought leadership, right? Like, you notice none of the brands that they talk to are putting out really overpriced mints so much as releasing NFTs in a really value-added way that's kind of novel. And I think we'll see that repeated a lot. We've worked with those guys a little bit and like them a lot. And past that, I think there's a guy at Salesforce actually who's hit the nail on the head as far as this new data economy that's coming. His name is Max Comparetto. And I've talked to him a few times, and he seems to know what's coming. And, you know, as far as separating signal from noise, you know, there are quite a few OGs that I look up to. Balaji Srinivasan is a great one. Likewise, Chamath is a good one. And there's a few others where I'll follow them and I'll read what they're saying. Naval Ravikant, just to understand what's going on from a philosophical perspective, how to think about this and develop mental models around the space. And then, you know, past that, as far as implementations, people who are working on cool stuff, you know, I feel like, and I'm blanking on his name, but there's some guys at a company called Land Vault, where we've partnered with them on a couple implementations, and yeah, I just really like how they're thinking about it. And so yeah, I'm just trying to be ego free, right? You get ego beaten out of you at Amazon, and then even more so at a startup. And so for me, it's just like hopefully smart enough to know that I'm not that smart, and wanting to keep being a perpetual learner so that I can avoid making undue mistakes.
Yeah, fantastic. So the old empty cup. And so the biggest challenges that you see with Web3 moving forward, I know it's going to evolve rapidly. It's the Wild West essentially, but what do you think are going to be the biggest challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we've hit it a few times, but flat out regulatory clarity, right? Like, I think Web3 ends up a challenge to the extent that governments are not providing clear guidance around what to do with this technology and the assets created on the blockchain they're in, right? Like, are they assets? Are they collectibles? Is it treated as art, or is it treated as a stock, right? And I think until a point in time at which governments develop frameworks that are easy to interpret, right, I think that remains a headwind for the space. Past that, I think, like, from a macro perspective, and government is easy, it's the layup, but I think, part of it is that the paradigm needs to shift as far as how people are thinking about it. Like, I was disappointed, I think, in the last bull run to see that basically the ICO craze got repeated in the form of NFTs, and that was really it, right? Like, not too much different happened, except for now celebrities were buying the tokens, and a different brand of people were selling them, and so I think we have to get away from this mental model of like, hey, everything to do with the blockchain is a financial instrument, or else that will remain a headwind, right? If as long as the mainstream public perceives it as a bullshit casino filled with hot air and idiots, then that is a headwind. And so what I'm hoping to start to see is more value-added implementations where the payoff for the developers is later but greater, right? And so I think that to the extent that people have it as their mental model that this is a place to create financial instruments out of nothing and that everything should be a token, right? That's a headwind majorly. And so I don't think I see too many other headwinds than that. Like, my long-term take on this space, right, is not just as somebody with vested interest, but just as somebody who kind of sees the writing on the wall, is while a lot of the stuff has been silly, there are implementations of blockchain that create experiences like removing centralized entities in favor of end users, like in DeFi, where it is so overwhelmingly more user friendly that I think that in absence of any ridiculous regulation, and even then probably no matter what the development crops up and elsewhere that isn't regulated, right, it's like you end up seeing adoption because whatever is most user friendly wins on a sufficiently long time horizon. And I think blockchain empowers people to create slightly more user-friendly applications experiences than previously were possible. And so excited certainly to be part of whatever this next wave of adoption looks like, of hopefully things that are really real.
Do you think that it hasn't been mass adopted yet? Is it because it's so early? Is it because Web2 companies don't know what they don't know? What is it going to help them to take it to the next level? Is it a conversation?
Yeah, I mean,
with you, like you're a thought.
I hope so. I mean, so I think it is developer tooling for one thing, right? Like every single enterprise we talked to basically said, like, we would love to build here, but we don't have the devs for it. And so if we can let Java devs go build on the blockchain very easily, which we have, then I expect we start to see more adoption, and then the chicken and egg problem gets solved, right? Past that, I think as far as mainstream user onboarding, we're trying to solve that on the other end of the tech by just creating infrastructure that allows for the seamless mainstream user onboarding experience with a traditional wallet. I made this post on LinkedIn the other day, but it's like, I think more crypto wallets get created via traditional username, password, OAuth in the next 5 years than ever were created in the last 10, simply by mainstream users. And I think it is really lowering this barrier to entry, making this space less scary, making it more intuitive, right? And then past that, like, you have to have applications, and experiences and games and loyalty programs built on the blockchain that make users, give a shit enough to want to be participating, right? Like, if you make it easier for them and more value added for them to be in this world and to be outside of it, then they'll come in.
And what about for those who are already in there but maybe struggling? Can Utiliti help them?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, it's you can implement the platform piecemeal. It does a lot of different things. I rattle off most of them, and the rest are in our documentation. It's a whole wealth of things you can do with the platform. And I would say, like, if you're getting rinsed by some contract dev and you want to take a go yourself as a power user of a platform that makes that really easy, or you're wanting to shorten development cycles for your existing development team, or you're simply an NFT project that wants to add more utility, or a game that wants to release a year earlier, enterprise looking to release a digital loyalty program, right? It's like, fundamental level, all these tools that we built that underlie all these different use cases that I've just mentioned are the same. And so, in our heads, it's like, let's remain agnostic and build the building blocks of a world where this is just much easier to implement. Yeah.
And so a great segue there, as I understand you are creating an academy at some point amongst everything else that you're doing. obviously for people who are new to the space, an academy is going to be extremely powerful because it's going to help them understand it more, how it's going to work for them, how to utilize it, how to maximize the utility, etc. Tell us a little bit about the academy vision, I guess, at this stage.
I'll leave this one to Alexander. The academy is in the world of public facing things that aren't me just ranting at people, and Alexander pretty much owns all of that and is a powerhouse in that area. So
we're really excited about the proposition of putting together an academy that I think you said it really well. It's a place where obviously folks can go in and kind of see not just, I guess, how to do things, but maybe what you can do with them. So we want to kind of go with a two-pronged approach there. And I'd say we're still a few months out from getting that to a point where it's ready to be released to the public, because we want to make sure that it's robust enough that it's a source of information that you continue to come back to. But we're already working with a few folks to put together academy courses based off of the design of our tooling and kind of some of the existing use cases that can be implemented using the tools that we have as we speak. So we're pretty excited about bringing that to the general public in kind of a shiny manner, I guess, so to speak. And designs are already underway for that. We're getting some of these courses already built out. So we're really excited about getting to a place where we can be a one-stop shop for folks who are looking and maybe don't know exactly how to or what you can do with some of this technology, and presenting to them information in a way that is very easily digestible, but still robust enough to help them realize the full potential of a lot of these tools. Because, we've talked to so many different folks, some people who are ready to implement Web3, some who have already got these really fleshed out, great, robust ideas for it. And then other folks who are just still kind of on that exploratory side of thing. They're figuring out, well, how does it work? What could we do with it theoretically? And we want to kind of put all of that information together in Utiliti Academy to be a one-stop shop for people who are both curious and ready to jump into Web3. So we're excited about the work we've already got going, building that out, and hopefully, fingers crossed, getting that live in the next coming months.
Incredible, mate. Incredible value, and also a beautiful marketing tool, I guess, because if you aren't clear yet on what you want to do in the space, then having the academy is just going to help open the mind, I guess, to the infinite possibilities that we talked about at the start.
Yeah. And how many ways, again, it all goes back to kind of changing the power structure a little bit, moving the power into the hands of the people and away from, I guess you could say, some of the centralized entities, and what some of those things like decentralization might do and lack of centralized authorities, and how you could build programs based off of putting that ownership in the hands of the user, and how much that really up levels their experience, and in turn their experience with you as that executor company, whether it's an enterprise or a small business, and just kind of putting the power to the people.
Sounds amazing, mate. Obviously, guys, it's been an extremely enlightening conversation for me. Relatively new to the space. Want to thank you so much. I guess the last thing I want to ask, Nick, yourself, Pete, and Alexander, if you were to leave the viewers with one key thought, or maybe there's something we haven't covered, floor is yours, lads.
I kind of hit on it already, but I'm hoping what the most important takeaway is, as this tech starts to become more mainstream, is that, not all blockchain implementations are a scam, right? Like, not all blockchain implementations need to be financial instruments. Not all blockchain implementations need to be perceived by, let's say, people who are unfamiliar with the tech but have only heard bad things about it as bad things, right? Like, I think there are plenty of people in this space who have either lacked the tooling to build something, or who are trying to build something, right, that is genuinely more user-friendly to mainstream people than anything that's previously been created, be it a social platform or a decentralized finance platform, or simply just a brand loyalty program that gives back a little bit more. And so I think, for anyone listening, if you came into this with no knowledge about NFTs or Web3 or the blockchain, then my hope is that the takeaway is that, like, hey, there are real people who are a little smart, working on things that are hopefully going to change the world in a way where people are able to interact on the basis of this new digital primitive in a way that is, better for everybody involved than what has previously been possible.
Yeah, and if I had any last thing to add, again, and I kind of just hit it on my last little blurb there, and that just is, We're really excited about the different ways that people can use this to put some of the power back into the hands of the users and to up-level their experience, and how that can help everybody involved, because we think that kind of a change in this power structure and a change in the way data is handled, a change in the way ownership is handled is, I guess you could say, long overdue. And we're excited. I was going to say anxious, but we're more excited to see how some of these implementations play out and how people can kind of change the way that they look at Web3, change the way they think about blockchain, and to the point that it becomes so mainstream that it's really ubiquitous, and what you're living with is the results, and you're living with the benefits, and you're not living with I guess you could say, maybe what people are seeing it used as for now. So a little patience is required, but we're really excited about the sky, the limit.
Yeah, and I'd just like to finish off. To me, it's exciting for business that there is a way to implement this new tech now, where I don't have to understand all the jargon and the wallets and the development side, but I can implement a way that's going to benefit my business, that's going to benefit my customers, and it's going to be a win-win for everyone. So it's really great what you guys are doing and bringing it to the people, something that was some mysterious concept and now has real use cases. So thanks very much, guys, for doing that, and really excited where this goes.
Definitely. I'm hoping that someday this video that we're recording today gets aired on a platform that airdrops somebody a proof of attendance protocol in exchange for simply having listened to me rant for an hour and a half.
Well, we'll have to come to Utility, mate, for you to be able to help us do that.
We'll make it happen.
Awesome. Well, guys, just a final one for me. You've just triggered it with what you're saying. So obviously you're about development, you're about infrastructure, you're about commercialism as well. It obviously got to benefit corporate and business. But one thing that really stands out for me is you guys, it's really about making a difference, right? So what is the underpinning driver that's, that gets you up every day to be able to make that difference? Because to me, that I feel like there's something there driving both of you, whether it's something that's happened to you in the past or it's just a fundamental value that you've got. What would you say that is, just for my sake, for the viewers' sake, and obviously for potential customers' sake?
Yeah, like I said, my personal crusade is to see more value-added implementations of the blockchain, right? Like I've been in this space a really long time and held cryptocurrency for a really long time, and we've only really seen it used as a financial instrument historically speaking. And so for me, what it is it's like we have this new paintbrush, this new digital primitive to build incredible things with, and I don't think we've seen even 1% of what could be built now that some of these implementations are possible. And so for me, it's sort of like it's realizing this world where you don't have, I would say, centralized platforms, be it monetary systems or even the Facebooks of the world, sort of extracting value from end users in a place where they no longer necessarily need to, given that they could be replaced by new platforms and paradigms built on this technology, right? For me, it's like, how do we help speed along this evolution wherein people are sort of starting to pull more control back into their own hands, right? And away from entities that, through the way the world just happens to be set up, end up parasitic and no fault of their own, but that is just, the profit motive can be good and it could be bad, and in some scenarios it just ends up being bad, right? It's like, I think we're knocking on the door of a world where, and again, I'm not saying this is like a eat the rich type of thing, but the Pareto principle means that assets distribute in majority to a very small number of people, the square root of the number of people in a productive domain. And throughout history, we've run into this problem where there is a line below which people can fall, and it ends up toppling societies. And I don't think that we're close, but we're getting closer as a society. And so I think that one of the antidotes to that, right, to lift people back up out above that line and to, I would say, spread the value that gets created in this world out more evenly, across people, and distribute it in a way that creates something that looks a little bit more human friendly as opposed to centralized entity friendly, is blockchain, right? Like, I think that this technology has the power to sort of start to pull people a little bit back up above that line to the detriment of, I would say, needlessly large centralized entities. And so for me, that's the crusade I'm on in the abstract. It's like, how do we sort of start to help these abstractions that could be built with this digital primitive get built?
Yeah, and I've got I guess I'll end this with just a short little personal story here of maybe what a lot of my passion derives from. And over the, like I mentioned at the beginning, I've been in the space for quite a while in all sorts of communities. And there was a time many years ago when we happened to be some buddies and I conversing with somebody from a South American country that was experiencing massive inflation. And we started talking together. So, hey, maybe we can think of a way to help this person. And if you go back in traditional methods to go help folks who, financially speaking, at least in other countries, sometimes it's really tough. You can't just Venmo somebody money in Venezuela. And so we came to the pretty rapid conclusion that, hey, let's just send some crypto. And while that kind of financial and transactionary based technology isn't necessarily what we're focusing on at Utiliti, what it really did was make me realize, like, as this technology proliferates and as blockchain proliferates and as some of the accessibility of the blockchain and some of the, I guess you could say, the immutability and the lack of centralization proliferates, we can start to see access open up, not just in financial markets, but an opportunity for folks all over the world. So really what is driving me, at least personally, is I want to see this stuff out there across the world so we can really see what kind of access we can get those folks that may not have it already, because a lot of the world does not have access, whether that's financial institutes, whether that's any sort of financial opportunity, or whether it's even some of these social opportunities that we're seeing crop up with some new implementations. So getting that global and making blockchain ubiquitous, while it's a pretty broad goal, I think that's kind of what's driving a lot of what we're doing here, a lot of what I'm excited about, how we're helping.
I love it, guys. I think probably one of the big reasons we're even talking is because I feel like we're very like-minded. Integrity is massive, transparency is massive, freedom, control, obviously inclusion, making things available to everyone. Guys, just want to say a real big thanks on behalf of myself and Pete. It's great to have outliers on the show, innovators, renegades, rebels. You're doing great things, guys, and it's just exciting to hear. And we hope, from our perspective, that it continues to grow. You get as much support as you can, you get as much clients and customers as you can, and then obviously, again, you're just going to make that bigger difference to the world. So thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having us on. We'll be back.
Sincerely appreciate it.
Well, there it is. We hope you enjoyed this inspiring Web3 TV episode with Nick and Alexander from Utiliti. For more videos, resources, and information, visit web3tv.com.au or connect with us on our social media pages below. I'm Andrew McComb.
And I'm Peter Gillett, and here's to exploring the potential of Web3, making a difference to the world.
We'll see you soon.